Zonja Zotrin, këtu jemi kapitalizit. Mirë se na keni ardhur. Kemi rastin e mirë që kemi mes gjithë juve dhe zotit DioGuardi për punët e tij e për kontributit të tij për Kosovën e përgjithsisht, për tonë Shqipëninë etnike, Shqipëni, Maqedoni, kudo në Malzi, DioGuardi ka punu për popullin tonë, për kombin tonë, ka dediku jetën e tij si Andresh. Para 500 vjetë familja e tij ka dalë në Itali, mirë po këtu akoma flasin shqip. Edhe kur Kosova nuk u dinte me kisht na pyeshin se ku është Kosova, DioGuardi ishte në Kongresin Amerikan, ishte Congressman, edhe qifi punën e Kosovës e boni ditën tonë Shtetet Bashkuara të Amerikës. 14 vjetë mësoj Kongresin Amerikan për Kosovë. Pranej kur erdhi çështja e bombardimeve edhe ndihmave ato kur kërkun administrata amerikane, presidenti Clinton, $4 milion, Kongresi tha do t'i japim $10 miliard. 4 miliard jo, 10 miliard. Luftoni, shkatroni se. Ato tjera i dini vetë se i keni përjetu, se që ndodhi, sa të nevoja me i përmenë këtu. Zonja Shirley Cloyes, e cila për zonja DioGuardi tani, po kanë punu së bashku, kjo ka shtypë sa biznisë e saj, për edhe shkruan libra, shtypë libra, pra ne këto të dy janë t'i punu 4 anët sot. Sidomos tash, ku rreziku është më i madh për tregshep, po janë ose me treqë, janë t'i punu 4 anët. Edhe sot bile kemi pas punë, pra ne pa punë.
A lot of things happening, you know, in the Albanian world right now, in the Balkans, and Shirley and I keep in touch with all of these issues. We speak every week to Ahmed Jafari, we speak every day to Ramu Sharadinai, so we try to keep in touch with what's going on so we can be prepared. If you are prepared, then you can win. One of the problems that we know about Albanian history is that it has always been difficult for Albanians to prepare for what was coming because they have been unfortunate to have been subject to some of the worst oppression, some of the worst political systems anywhere in the world. And when I was a congressman in 1985, and the Albanian people discovered my father speaking Albanian, they were very surprised. Now, I knew when I was raised that I had Albanian blood, but I did not know the history of my people. Think about that. 500 years, my father has people who came from Albania in the year 1461. 1461, my father's town, Greci, was formed by 2,000 soldiers from George Castriati who came to fight to save the Kingdom of Naples from the French. This is before the Turks ran over Albania. My father's town, you'll see it in National Geographic, I have the magazine I gave, was the first Albanian town in Italy. 2,000 soldiers stayed. George Castriati goes back, 1461, to fight the Ottoman Turks. He never came back to Italy. Those 2,000 soldiers never went back. They stayed there over 500 years. Shirley and I visited that town. Now, it's incredible to me that here I am in a family that speaks Albanian, but I did not know about Kosovo. I did not know about the history of Albanians in the Balkans. Am I ashamed? No, because in America, this was not what they taught us. America is not interested in Eastern European history and geography. They were interested in other things. So it never came up in my high school, my college, and the Albanians that I knew were Italian Albanians. They were not educated. They came here from Italy because they had no jobs. They had no work. My father came in the worst depression in the last century, 1929. People were starving in his town, Kreci. They had some families, my cousins, that had 10 children. They had to give the daughters to the convent, the Catholic Church, because they had no food, and they became nuns in the church. This is in Italy in 1929. And that's how my father came to America. Couldn't speak English, only spoke Albanian and Italian. Didn't have any education because Italy was not educating the Albanian people in those days. Today, everybody has an education in Italy, just like we have in America. Why do I tell you this? Because it is almost a miracle that I am the oldest son of my father, who speaks Albanian, and I go to the Congress of the United States of America. And in 1985, on my 45th birthday, we are doing a fundraiser for me to go back to Congress the second time, and Albanians came with some of my Irish friends, and they hear my father speaking Albanian. And they couldn't believe it. How is your father speaking Albanian? I said, well, I know I'm Albanese. I know in Italy we have a lot of Albanians, Albanians, but then they start speaking about Kosovo. I said, I know about the Turks. I don't know about the Serbs. Interesting, huh? So now I go to my friends in Congress, Tom Lantos, Ben Gilman, Bob Dole, and I started to talk about this issue. Why? Because Albanians the next day after that birthday came to my house, maybe 20, to tell me about Kosovo. And I couldn't believe it. I said, how could you have this kind of oppression in Europe so close to Italy and nobody knows about it here? I says, I would like to see what Congress knows about this. So I go to Congress, and don't forget, in Congress we have 535 congressmen, 100 senators, 2 from each state, and 435 deputies, parliamentarians, we call them House members. And one by one, nobody knew about Kosovo. Only people knew about Kosovo were Tom Lantos. Why? He's born in Hungary. Came here, from the Holocaust, and he knew everything about Kosovo. Even knew that George Kastriati's friend was Janusz Hanyadi. He knew the whole history. And I said to him, Tom, I'm helping you now with the problems of the Jews in the Soviet Union, because the Russians were persecuting the Jews back in the middle 50s, 80s. I'm helping you now with these monks in Tibet, because the Chinese are persecuting them. I'm helping you now, even though I'm a conservative Republican, and all the Republicans were not voting for the sanctions in South Africa because they felt that was not the way to deal with it. I gave the black people the benefit of the doubt, voted against my own party, and I went and supported the sanctions against South Africa and supported Nelson Mandela. I says, now I'm helping all of these. Can you help me? For the Albanian people. This is my father's blood. I'm an American, but I want to do something for them. And he says, absolutely. He says, nobody brought this issue to Congress before. We will start, and we will find other congressmen that understand this, and if they don't, we will educate them. And we went to see Congressman Gilman, who knew something about this because he was involved in foreign affairs, and we went to see others. And the rest is history. One by one, we became, with me as a congressman, a lobby for the Albanian people of Kosovo. And little by little, we educated the Congress about this. Now, why is this important? It's important that you understand that for at least 50 years, forget about 500 years, we know what the Turks did to the Albanian people, how they oppressed them, how they forced them to be what they weren't. Don't forget, all Albanians were Christian 500 years ago. Now, that doesn't mean religion is an issue with us, but somehow they were persuaded, or maybe even forced, to change who they were. Many left because of that. Didn't want to change. So we became a nation of people that was oppressed from the beginning by the Turks, and a lot left. That's how tens of thousands of Albanians ended up in Italy. Root languages of Europe. That's the history we have. And it almost was lost. When you think about it, people started to oppress Albanians right from the beginning when we saw what happened with the Turks and then with the Serbs. But the experience in America, well, I mentioned this young man that came up, and he started talking to me. He says, you know, I don't speak Albanian. He said, but I know I'm Albanian. He was from the Sanja. He was telling me how Albanians were forced to forget their language. And now they only speak Macedonian or Serbo-Croatian, but he knows that he has Albanian blood from 100 years ago. And we know in Montenegro, there are Albanians who are forced to change the name to put an IC at the end of the name. Some plants are very delicate. You gotta almost put the seed in the laboratory and you're afraid maybe it doesn't grow. There are other plants, the weeds, you can't kill them. No matter where you put those seeds, they grow. And gardeners don't like those plants, but they still grow anyway. Albanians are like that. You put an Albanian almost any place, they survive. It's amazing. They know how to get jobs. They know how to stay up if they have to stay up like my father, 24 hours. They don't care. Work to them is easy. And they have strong families. And they have a lot of hope. And they were able to overcome some of the worst oppression from nations like the Turks, like the Serbs, communism. When you think about all the things that tried to eliminate the Albanian people as a race of people, you would say it's a miracle that they're there today. Well, it's a miracle that Albanians would find my father and would find me and give me a new purpose we want. Number 3, you gotta work for what you want. And you gotta do the things step by step to accomplish what you want, just like you've done for your families. You know you need a job. You know your kids need an education. You know you want to keep your families supported over there. And you, one way or another, think about how to accomplish that. Albanians are very good at doing something for their families. They're very bad at doing something for their nation. They get too confused when it comes to the big picture, how to work together to accomplish the big picture. That doesn't mean that Albanians are selfish. That doesn't mean that Albanians are not good people, but they have been so oppressed for so many centuries that the biggest strength they had was their families. That's what survived, get them together. And that's what helped them survive. Just like those Italians in Sicily that were invaded by everybody. They even formed this idea of the mafia to protect the family, right? That became their strength, but it then became their weakness. The weakness now for the Albanian people, politically speaking, is that there is so much emphasis on family survival, individual survival, and family accomplishments, individual accomplishments. Because of this oppression, it becomes a defensive thing that it's difficult for Shirley and me to form an international strategy for the Albanian people because there are so many ideas that people have. Now what does the Greek lobby do? They know that's not enough. They come to Washington and they spend big money. Every Greek restaurateur is on the line with a check for $1,000 when the Greek lobby says, give it here. They do it. And they mainly support the Democrats, Clinton and Gore. One of the things I'm praying, no matter who you are, Republican or Democrat, is that Bush wins, because I know that all these Greeks are going to be removed from the State Department and from the CIA. The head of the CIA is a Greek. He's really Albanian from Chabria, Himani anyway, but he thinks he's a Greek. You know, his family speaks Albanian, but he's been conditioned politically to think Greek. Now, you got to get rid of these people. But the Greeks were smart. They put a lobby in Washington to control the foreign policy, to be sure that Albania stays with people like Nana. Who do you think got rid of Saudi Berisha? The Greek lobby. The Greek lobby paid Ramos Plashko to come to the United States. We found this out. I'm giving you the information I know. I don't care. This is the truth. When you have the truth, you got to speak it. I know Albanians don't like to criticize each other. It's part of the tradition of the Albanian people. If there's something wrong, you don't say it. No. That tradition's got to stop. When something's wrong, we got to criticize even our uncle if he's in the wrong side of the politics for the people. It's got to be done. This is democracy. You got to speak up for what you want. And if something's wrong, you got to say it to the person's face. Like the Jews. That's the way I was raised in the United States. I'm born in America. I'm not born in Kosovo, and that's the way I was raised. If I don't like something, you're going to know it. But at least you know where I stand. The Greeks are very smart. They don't argue that the Albanian people are bad. They just work behind the scenes to make sure they control the agenda in the Balkans. So with that, let me, I can talk about a lot of things, but let me leave you with that message. I want Shirley now to speak, and then we want to take your questions, okay? Thank you very much.
I think I also told you at the airport that after being the Balkan Affairs Advisor to the Albanian American Civic League for the past 6 years, I was asked in the summer by Ramesh Haradinaj to become the U.S. spokesperson for the Alliance for the Future of Kosovo. And I said yes immediately. I had worked in Michigan during the war, and I believe that Ramesh Haradinaj is the heart and soul of the Kosovo Liberation Army. But let's think about it. Why did he ask me, and not Albanian, to take on that role? Well, first, he knew about the Albanian American Civic League. I don't know whether you know, but we were the first Albanian organization in the United States to stand up in support of the Kosovo Liberation Army. We were also the organization that prevented KLA from being criminalized. I don't know if you remember that moment. Moment when our Balkan envoy, Robert Delbar, called Vučića a terrorist organization and basically gave the Serbs the green light to invade Granica. Well, we knew he was coming to Washington for a hearing on Bosnia, and this is the power of the lobbyist Joe was describing it. We changed that hearing to focus on Kosovo, and we forced him in front of the press and the Congress to admit that the United States did not declare Vučića as a terrorist organization, and overnight, the president had changed, and we could keep the weapons going. And I think in the coming year, we have to make some very important things. And the first thing is that all the Albanian prisoners of war in Serbian jails must be released immediately. And we are not going to accept a delay on that anymore. As you know, month to month, people are dying.
This also gives us the opportunity to see who the real leaders are among the Albanian people. I don't want to see a leader in Kosovo that just knows how to talk and to promise. I want to see someone who's good every day to make something happen so the quality of life goes up for the Albanian people of Kosovo. I want to see someone who does something, not just talks about it. In 1992, January, I brought Tom Lantos to Luxembourg, and I brought Ilyas Romali, the former head of the Convendi, to Luxembourg to meet Lord Bethel from England, who is the head of the interparliamentary group at that point for Europe and human rights. We wanted to form an interparliamentary group for Kosovo in 1992 so the world would know that there is a government in exile, that Kosovo had a parliament, that the Serbs chased that parliament out, and that parliament was the real government of Kosovo, and I wanted to develop the sympathy from all the parliaments in the world for that Convendi. These elections were very, very good because there was such a large participation by the people, and the procedures that they put in place were good, and there was no violence. But I saw something very, very bad about these elections. And I made this in my report to Gilmore. You had two parties, LDK and Taci, that got over 85% of the vote. You got the third party, Ramesh Haradinaj, got 8% of the vote. The fourth party, Mark Krasniqi, got 1%, 1,600 votes. You start the election off, you have 19 parties and 21 unaffiliated individuals registered in this election, 40 altogether. How is it that two parties get 85% and then the rest, 38, the parties and individuals get only less than 15? Because money has a lot to do with this. I saw with my eyes the expensive buses that LDK and Tachi were bringing in, filling the stadiums up with the buses coming from all over Kosovo, so that they would have 40, 50,000 people in one day, so the people could see this like this was real support. By itself, there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm going to give you the American experience on elections because I know I had to get elected in America. I know with my friends in the Republican Party, especially the conservatives, I'm going to have an easy time with Bush to say, look at those communists there in Albania. By the way, you got communists, a lot of communists in Greece too. Why are we here today supporting Western Europe, pushing everything towards Western Europe, but we're not trying to change this government in Albania that is still a communist type government? You want me to start the Yes. Oh, my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Just hold on for a minute. Shake your hand. Thank you for coming. All right. You want me to sign it?
Yeah, I have to,
Do you have connections in Toronto? We're going to find out who. We're going to find out who lives in Toronto.
I think Toronto, you have the DJ.
Now, we know that all Serbian people are not bad. A lot of them were given bad information, just like in World War II. The German people, their minds were poisoned about the Jewish people, and they did crazy things. A lot of the Serbian people are good people, but they got bad information. So we have to understand that. I think people basically are good, but they can be misled, and we know that. But in any case, I thought by telling a story that I heard when I was younger, and this was a story that was meant to put the Italian people down, because when I was raised in the Bronx, there were many Irish and many others who were there before the Italians. I was born in an Italian area, and they would always have stories about the Italians that, were kind of discriminatory, but they had their fun. And, that's the way the world is. But I remember this story, and I says, I'm now going to use that same story, and I'm going to replace the Italian in the story with a Serb. And this might make the Albanian people feel pretty good. And the story goes like this. 3 people who didn't know each other, they were from different countries. One was an Indian from Asia, one was a Jew, and one was a Serb. They decided to travel, but they did not plan. And they didn't get a hotel. And when they got to the foreign country, there was no place to stay. So they didn't meet each other yet, but as the sun is going down and they're going on the road, they met each other. And now they're talking to each other what bad luck they have, they can't stay any place. And as they're walking, they see in the distance, it's getting dark, they see a light. It was a farmhouse. So they run up to the farmhouse, they knock on the door, and the farmer comes to the door, and they explain the problem. And the farmer was a very nice person. He said, listen, I can help you, but my house is small. I can take 2 of you. One of you has to sleep in the barn with the animals, obviously. So the Serb now is very arrogant. He says, I will never sleep in any barn, and they had a big argument. Finally, the Jewish guy was a nice guy. He says, listen, we have to get some sleep. I will go to the barn. You come in the house here to sleep in. That's it. 20 minutes later, there's a knock at the farmer's door. It's the Jew. And he says, I can't sleep in this barn. There's a pig in there. It's against my religion to sleep with the pigs. And now they had another big argument. And the Serb, he wouldn't go to the barn, so finally the Indian guy says, we have to get some sleep. So the Indian goes to the barn. 20 minutes later, there's a knock at the door. It's the Indian. He says, I can't sleep in that barn either. There's a cow in there, and we worship cows in India. So finally now the Serb wouldn't go, they just threw him out. And the Serb had to sleep in the barn, and the other two now they go to sleep. 20 minutes later, there's a knock at the door. Guess who it is? The pig and the cow. They wouldn't sleep with the Serb. This joke now is going all over Macedonia. I told it to Abin Jafari, and it's going now in Albanian all over Macedonia and Kosovo. So it's a good way to put the Serbs where they belong. In the barn. Did you get that on the camera?
Yeah.
For the first time, I told that joke on the camera.
I know look after
In the barn.
We are so happy to be here. You made us feel comfortable. You made us feel at home. And this is a long place from New York. Albanians, I think, are very well suited to be Western and to be democratic. No matter where we go and meet Albanians, it's like we are meeting people in New York, people that have been there a long time. They adopt very easily to Western standards in every respect. And maybe they have some things to teach the West. But unfortunately, Albanians have been kept in a big prison for 50 years under Enver, and a big prison in Kosovo for 50 years under Belgrade. And now's the time to let them out of jail permanently. To give the key back to the Albanians to their own home. As I said many times, there's nothing more important to an Albanian than the key to his own home that he earned for himself, and he built for himself or herself with their family. It's unfortunate that while we have the keys to many beautiful homes all around the world, we don't have the key to our nation, Kosovo especially. That key right now is in the hands of the United Nations, and it could go back to the Serbs if we are not on the ball and do our job. So our first mission is to get the key to the Albanian nation back to the Albanian people. And it starts with Kosovo. As soon as we get independence from Kosovo, I know Albania did not last the way it is. It's going to be truly democratic once Kosovo is independent. And I've seen enough of the spirit and endurance of the Albanians of Macedonia that I know that sooner or later they will be part of this Albanian nation, because Macedonia is a very, very weak state, more fragile than Kosovo. When Kosovo gets its independence, you can be sure that it will pass Macedonia very, very quickly in economic output. You can just see it by the way the people already operate there under terrible conditions, and the world is going to be very surprised about that. So we have a lot of good things to look forward to, but it's a matter of history that you don't get good things without working hard. And you don't get good things without working hard and working smart. Donkeys know how to work hard, but they don't know how to work smart. That's why they're animals. Albanians have to learn that if you want to win big things, you've got to do two things. You got to work hard and you have to work smart. And working smart right now for the Albanian nation is to have a strong lobby with one voice, with a big chair in Washington, well funded, so there's money coming not just for humanitarian, but also to save the house for the Albanian people so they can build on that. Without having the key to that house, you will just keep feeding the Albanian people forever. And you'll get weaker and weaker and weaker, and over 100 years, the Albanian people will be assimilated. This is what the Serbs want, this is what the Macedonians want, this is what the Greeks want. And the Russians don't care, and the French don't care, and the communists in Italy don't care. America cares, all Albanians care, and we cannot let another 100 years of ethnic cleansing. We've seen the assimilation in Macedonia, in Montenegro. We have Albanians now with Serbian names. We've seen what happened in the Sanjak. Albanians now can't even speak Albanian. They're speaking Serbo-Croatian. We've seen the ethnic cleansing. Do we want another 100 years of this? No. But to wish it doesn't make it come true. You've got to work for it. Shirley and I are working. We work every day. And we hope not only are we working smart, but we're working hard, but we're working smart. We need you now to make this league of yours strong. You raise money, keep it in the bank over here, but when you need it in Washington, and I call Jamal and Isar, you have to send a check just the way we're going to have it from Australia, and we're going to have it from Italy, and I'm going to raise it also in America, because without having the professional staff and the professional computers, and without having the money to give to our friends in Washington that support us, we are dreaming. And all we'll do is dream and fall asleep, and in 100 years there will be no Albanian nation, because we've seen what happened in the last 100 years. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I believe that we are going to be an extremely strong nation. We certainly have the potential for it, and the time has never been better for us than now. So we have to grab the moment, seize the moment. The time now is to seize that moment so we can establish our nation. And once we have that, I think this Albanian nation is going to be so strong, so beautiful, that it will not only bring stability to Europe, but it's going to be one of the key players in the world, just like the Jewish nation has become. A small nation with a big voice, a lot of technology, a lot of productivity. I see this with the Albanian people. Okay? So thank you again, everybody, for what you have done, for what you are doing for the Albanian people, for the league, and for bringing us here to this.